This is a video critique on the Steam version of Peggle. It's a pachinko-like puzzle game released by PopCap in 2007, solid and standout in its own right. It's a game I could recommend to almost anyone, even if just for a few minutes, with it mostly being a fairly unique and laid-back experience. With that said, let's dive right in. Right off the bat, I can easily say this is quite a unique concept PopCap came up with. It's pachinko-like, but it's much more reliant on your skill than gambling or luck. I certainly can't say I know of too many other games like this one, besides the gambling machines and bagatelle it's already based off of, while having enough to set it apart from those two with the many gameplay systems here. I mean, just look at this regular pachinko machine and tell me this looks mechanically engaging. Although the main goal to clear all the pegs with a limited amount of balls is simple, there's some decent depth to be found. Different kinds of pegs influence every single playthrough of a level for vastly different results. With how green pegs alone are responsible for activating a whole magic power system, there's also the hope that can come from seeing a ball just barely land somewhere specific, or different kinds of point bonuses to help keep those doses of dopamine coming. The gameplay loop manages to be more than surface level without being overwhelming to casual players, and I feel that's pretty commendable. A few more examples include how you can potentially get a ball shot for free if it never hits a peg, if it lands in the bucket, and orange pegs being worth more and more points as you delete more of them. It's pretty accessible with little to stress over, on top of how all you need to play this game is a mouse and its left click. Which brings me to this game's major problem, how it implements its luck. This game's gambling roots hold it back. Your goal to beat a level is just clearing every orange peg, right? Sounds simple enough. But luck comes up as an issue when the pegs are just something you can't make a foolproof strategy for. After about 13 hours of playing or so, I've tried several times to deduce where the ball is going to go, but it very rarely goes where I think it will after a few bounces, if that. It's something I doubt even most players will come close to getting good at, even if this game is mostly laid back enough for this to not be a crippling issue. Like this scenario here, I'm not sure what I can even do at this point. I guess I just have to restart. The game is perfectly beatable in spite this, but if the game just gave you 15 balls instead of 10, or if orange pegs just weren't necessary to progress the adventure mode, I wouldn't be as against this being a trial and error facet of the game, because at the end of the day, it does keep the gameplay fresh. You can probably have points unlock things instead, so players still have a reason to not just stare at the pretty colors, while also giving more weight to points besides a leaderboard nobody is ever going to see. Unless, well, you bother posting it online for some reason. Furthermore, it also goes against the game trying to be a more laid-back experience given its music and presentation. And when I'm on my 5th retry of a stage because I'm off by some weirdly placed orange pegs, I can get pretty discouraged to keep at it due to little fault of my own. I'm a fan of a good challenge, but not at the expense of me being unlucky. Even looking at speedruns, people seem to just shoot and hope for the best sometimes, even though these are people that have been grinding this game for hundreds of hours. Here's a clip of the world record holder of any percent for Peggle complaining about the luck in the game.
Yep, some luck needed.
The main story mode aside, they managed to put in a healthy amount of extra content in this game. There's a 2-player mode, a against the computer mode, and 75 challenges to try besides just mastering every main level on its own. I know I definitely won't bother with all of these as this game didn't strike a chord with me or anything, but I definitely like that it's here with those with the will and time to kill, you know? Visually, this game won't be getting any awards for its presentation, and I don't think it's to its detriment either. It's on the older side with how all of the cartoony backgrounds look a bit blurry, and also like any animation work put into them, with a few exceptions. But this game was perfectly passable on monitors and TVs from over a decade ago, and for the most part I don't really care about it anyway, thanks to all the different wacky and creative locations you're going to be seeing. That aside, the developers made some attempts to add flair elsewhere when it's appropriate with the effects every time you hit a peg, or the celebration and zooming in of hitting your last orange peg, and even crazier when it's an extreme fever, or how some of the Peggle master abilities have their own visual flair. It definitely has its highlights, and it helps with making this stand out more than just being a plain puzzle game. This is also partly related to gameplay, but it's nice seeing all the different ways they put blocks and pegs on screen to complement the backgrounds, without usually being weird to play. It's that nice attention to detail that isn't just pegs thrown on screen for the sake of it. The soundtrack, meanwhile, strives to hit a calm and smooth atmosphere, and I think it reaches that goal quite nicely. It has some jazz influence with how some of the instruments and how it's played, or how some of the synths help differentiate the different tracks. They're tracks meant to be loops, simple structures accompanied by occasional variations to help make it not boring, even though most of the soundtrack is fairly simple, or how some of the silences happen when you would expect something to give it that added flavor. It gets the job done rather well for the game it's in, and I didn't find it lacking whatsoever. Surprisingly though, they don't have any names. How weird. As for everything else I didn't cover, here's a thing or two I found noteworthy. I appreciate the ability to speed up your ball bouncing around by holding down right click. It's something that should have been absolutely free to do whenever, but it's nice that you can speed up a lot of other things. I really appreciate the accessibility feature with colorblind mode. It makes the colors darker while adding symbols for the nice bit of consideration for those that have the disability. It's weird thinking of how many games I've played in my entire life that don't have simple features like this. I like how you can slowly adjust your aim with the scroll wheel for tiny adjustments. It's a simple but no-brainer addition that I feel might have been forgotten by less proficient developers around this time. This game also runs flawlessly in 2023 after several Windows updates and operating system changes, compared to a bunch of other unoptimized games that don't run easily now and might even need a virtual machine to run at all, or those overrun by bugs by default and janky engines like both classic Fallouts or Morrowind. Being one of PopCap's titles from their golden days, this is one of their many attempts from back then that has held up pretty well all in all. It doesn't do any one thing exceedingly well besides maybe this game's amount of content, but it succeeds competently in most aspects, and for that I can really respect what old PopCap has made. It has a lifetime sales of over 50 million. Yes, you heard that right, 50 million, and I feel there's definitely good reason for that. Alright, this marks the end of my first video attempt at video game critique and analysis. Chances are I feel most people who check out my channel aren't going to willingly click on this one, especially compared to what I want to do later on. I mean, who even talks about this game anymore? And well, this isn't as in-depth as what I want to do later on either. I easily could have gone for twice as long here, if not 3 times as long. But hey, if it's one thing I can say, is that I now have the best video review on Peggle on the internet. Special thanks to Farah for helping me with the music section of this video. Without him it would have been easily a third of the length. If you're one of those that actually did click on this for me, and actually saw all the way up to here, then thank you. I hope you really got something out of this worthwhile. Hopefully this serves as a decent launching pad for my channel, even if it's mostly for getting a grasp on how to put all of these together. Until next time.